Hi, everyone. Good evening. Look at this room. This is amazing. I'm sorry it's a little cozy. Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm Lauren Leader. I'm the co-founder and CEO of All In Together. I am so thrilled that you are all here. I know it's a little cozy, but this is good because then you will get to know your neighbors. You'll get to know each other. This is an extraordinary room of amazing people gathered for an incredibly important conversation at a really critical time, and I am so thrilled and honored that you are all here. All In Together, for those of you who don't know us, is a women's civic leadership and education organization. In our work over the last 11 years, which I can't believe it's 11 years, we actually started right here in Washington at Google. If you were here that day, which I know you were, there are a few people who were here that day, 11 years ago, we have trained hundreds of thousands of women across America on the tools of civic leadership and political participation. But we've also gone deep to highlight and amplify the many ways that women shape and are shaped by the most pressing issues in our society. And since about 2015, we've been exploring in depth how technology, artificial intelligence, I'm gonna take this out, and the new, because this is weird. I'm like, leaning to the side, I don't like it. How technology and AI and all the newest innovations are changing the world, the workplace, and politics for women. So today we're gonna focus on one really actually very small slice of this profoundly complicated and rapidly changing landscape of artificial intelligence. It's a subject that's so vast and increasingly complex that we really will just scratch the surface. But we are committed to continuing this work for the long haul with the many incredible partners in this room and all of you. It's just that important. And as with everything that is happening in our world, women's voices are essential, but they are often left behind. And one of the most serious challenges that AI poses right now is for women. About 90 to 95% of all the online deepfakes are non-consensual sexualized images and 90% of them target women. You may have followed this week the stories that have been everywhere about what's happening on Grok and some of the efforts by some women's organizations to try to get the App Store to remove it. I'm not sure that's exactly the right answer. I'm still learning, but clearly there is a lot of challenge that is coming with this extraordinary transformational technology. And so while AI adoption is surging, there is also a real gender gap in AI adoption. Globally, men are about 1.5 times more likely to use generative AI at work than women. And women AI entrepreneurs, and we're gonna hear from some today, receive, like all other VC funding, a tiny percentage of investment capital is flowing to women AI entrepreneurs. And perhaps not surprisingly, women are vastly underrepresented in the AI industry as they have been in tech, for a generation. But I think what you're gonna hear is that gender parity in AI, it's more than nice to have. It's more than, this is not just about equity and inclusion. It's actually a technical requirement for a stable society. 51% of the population should have a voice and a say in how one of the most transformational technologies of our time will influence the world around us. So anyway, women are at the forefront of shaping the positive uses for AI, for innovation, for transformation, and the benefit of humanity at large. So this forum brings together some of the best and the brightest women practitioners and innovators to break down developments in the future of work, public policy, and philanthropy. You can access the amazing bios of all of our speakers on the digital program. There's QR codes on the agendas and all around, so be sure to read their bios. There's a QR code. The QR code is also up on the screen and it will be there so you can read about these amazing people. This event, especially in this moment, would not be possible if it weren't for the incredible sponsors who are here to support us. Microsoft, can we put up the sponsors? We're trying. Our first technical challenge of the day, great. Oh yeah, that's me. Microsoft, HP, Interdigital, and the Omidyar Network have all come together to help make this possible. And we are also thrilled to be partnering with one of Washington's most important and exciting new journalistic institutions. NOTUS. It does stand for News of the United States, right? Okay, I love that because I think that's so cool. NOTUS, News of the United States. And they are our exclusive media partner for today's program. So to give a few more minutes of welcome remarks, please welcome the CEO of NOTUS and my very dear friend, Arielle Elliot.
Thank you, Lauren. It is so nice to be here today. This is such a great crowd. And first of all, well, thank you for having us, Lauren. We are a nonpartisan newsroom that is focused on Washington, covering everything from Capitol Hill to the White House, and it is so nice to partner with another nonpartisan organization. So it's great to be here today. Many of you in the audience are already our readers, so that you know already that in these polarized times that NOTUS is lucky to have an audience that runs across the political spectrum. So we are really happy to be here today. AI is obviously an issue that is impacting all of us. It is a conversation in our newsroom all the time. It's also a major policy discussion on Capitol Hill. Over the course of this event, you're going to hear from two of our reporters, the lovely Daniella Diaz and Rogerson. They're here today. They're covering Congress, and they'll be leading discussions. We are just so glad, again, to be partnering with Lauren and All In Together to bring you this fantastic event. And I'm going to hand it back to Lauren to kick off the panels. Thank you.
Thanks, Arielle. First of all, I just want to say one of the things about this, to be really clear, I am absolutely not an expert on this. And I think what's so amazing about this topic is we're all learning. It is so new that there's nobody really who will say that they've mastered this subject area because it's so fast changing. So I really see this as an opportunity for myself to learn, and I know you all will join us. I know we have people coming. There are still Miss Mathoni, you should come sit down in the front. I'm just saying. Our amazing, we have such a good room. Amazing people. So our first conversation is going to be moderated by NOTUS reporter Danielle Diaz. Danielle covers politics in Congress for NOTUS, and she previously covered Congress for Politico and was a congressional reporter at CNN. In 2020, she traveled across the country as a CNN campaign embed, covering the presidential campaign efforts of Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren and then Vice President Mike Pence. That was the year we had 10 women running for president, ladies, 10 of them. Joining Daniella are Brittany Masalosalo, Chief Public Policy Officer at HP, and All In Together longtime supporter and friend. She works to deliver value by proactively identifying, quantifying, addressing geopolitical trends, influencing government policy, and coordinating HP, but also everyone in this town knows you. So I don't even need to introduce you. Okay, Victoria Meakin. Yes. Yeah, you can just go sit. Okay. Victoria Meakin is a tech entrepreneur who co-founded PhoneCharge, which was a forerunner to the earliest electronic payment processing companies, speaking of industries that did not have a lot of women at the time and still do not. She's also co-founder of Acrolus, a provider of proprietary OCR solutions, which she will explain because I don't know what that means, that creates efficiency in financial services and healthcare. And very importantly, she is the longstanding chair of the board of All In Together. Sharon Rodriguez is CEO and co-founder of Novado AI and brings 20 years of leadership experience spanning Fortune 500 companies and startups. She's a global senior executive who leverages technology to transform business operations. She brings a proven track record of driving top-line revenue growth, optimizing the customer experience, and delivering outsized results. Give it up for Sharon. And last but absolutely not least, I know we have a lot of students in the room, which was very intentional today. We have a bunch of students from the McCourt School. Where's the McCourt School, girls? Yeah. Yay, McCourt School. We also have, who's here from AU? I know we have AU students. So Angela Virtu is a professor, professorial lecturer in IT and analytics at American University's Kogod School of Business, where she empowers students with cutting-edge knowledge and technology, data analytics, machine learning, and AI. And just so you know, there will be audience Q&A after this, so be ready. Okay, come on over.
Do you want to stand? Yeah. Of course. I can roll with any punches very easily. Hi, y'all. I'm Daniella Diaz. I'm a reporter at NOTUS. Thank y'all for having me. I'm really excited about this conversation that I'm having with these amazing women about a really important topic, artificial intelligence. Look, the objective for this conversation is to discuss how our workforce will change with AI and what we can all do to prepare. I know that I'm concerned about how AI is going to affect my industry. I'm sure we all are worried how it's going to affect every industry. We will speak for about 30 minutes, and then at the end, we'll leave some time open for your audience questions. I'm going to be watching the clock, so don't worry about that, ladies. That's my job. Let's dive right in. Y'all were all introduced to Brittany Masalosalo, Angela Virtu, Sharon Rodriguez, and Victoria Meakin. Sharon, could I start with you? Tell us a little bit about Nevado AI, and the problem in the workplace it hopes to solve.
So Nevado actually came from an idea that I had over the course of the last year as I was working in what I would say is the confines of a very rigid enterprise structure, where I could see the opportunities that AI was bringing to the table, but I could not take advantage of them as a leader. And so really I had to step back and say, what are the things that are going to be necessary in a business that I can build that will allow enterprise to truly adopt AI in a way that they're comfortable? And so when we started our company, it was really about thinking about all the places where we knew and understood what AI could bring to the table and cobbling together the best solution with the things that enterprise needed. So we're an AI orchestration engine. We use agentic technology to help us build, deliver, and operate technology solutions for the insurance industry as well as financial services.
Sharon, for 1 second, could you speak a little louder into the mic?
Sure. Thank you. I've never in my life been told to speak louder. I had the microphone too far away. But the reality is that what we actually have done is kind of leaned into the things that are important to enterprise, which was, can we have an audible decision-making process, right? So like, can we clearly show and demonstrate how decisions were made, why they were made, and what the actions that were taken are by the agentic technology. Compliance is really important to us. Regulations are really important to us because they are important to our customers. And so that's what we're trying to bring to the table. Quite frankly, that still requires significant human-in-the-loop interactions, and we had this conversation just yesterday where this is not about letting the AI go and do whatever it needs to do, really and truly. It's about making sure that we can leverage the technology to get the speed that we need, ensure that we're getting the quality that we want, and all within the guardrails that we as humans can set for it and continue to strategically direct. And that's what I want to make sure everybody understands about how we think about technology as me as an entrepreneur.
Could I ask you as a follow-up, how do you mentioned the human component. How do we make sure that the human component remains in what you're discussing? What steps are you taking?
Our key strategic decisions that need to be made in the workflow or in the processes that we have for our technology cannot continue forward without a human push a button, review a document, approve a process, etc. So that's on us as we continue to build out the technology to ensure that those guardrails are still in place in all of the places that we believe it continues to be important. Technology will continue to evolve and it will get better and better. And so places where we have it today, we might not need it tomorrow, to be frank. But today there is significant human involvement in the overall decision making at the end of the day.
Brittany, can I start with you? What about you? What problems have you identified in the workplace that AI can solve?
Oh, what a fantastic question. Before I answer your question...
I have to thank our chief of staff for that, notice.
I did see that, thank you.
Justin, shout out Justin.
I'm gonna answer your question, but before I do, I just wanna take a moment and thank my HP team that has showed up in force today to come out and support. So a big shout out to the HP team. And I wanted to start there because I'm going to talk a little bit about how HP is thinking about it, and then I'll take off my HP hat and I'll share a little bit about how myself as Brittany is thinking about it. So HP has decided that going forward, we want to be the owners of the future of work. You cannot be an owner of the future of work without thinking about AI. And that really falls into two camps for HP. It's about how do we take AI tools and processes and implement them internally to drive productivity, increase the efficiency, basically make the company be able to serve our customers all around the world faster, with more agility, and meet their expectations even more than we had previously before. The second aspect of that, separated from how we're internalizing it, is HP wants to be in the AI game. I know that we are an OG legacy tech company. I call us the OGs because we are the founders of Silicon Valley, newsflash. We are the old iconic tech company. I heard somebody recently say that HP is like the designated driver in the tech industry. I don't know if that's a compliment or how to take that. It makes me feel old because I remember my HP calculator many years ago. But nonetheless, HP has been reinventing itself for years and years and years. We started making audio oscillators to calculators to computers, and that's not going to change with these AI disruptions. We are intent on continuing our legacy, particularly because through this long tenure that we have established ourselves as a trusted company. We have the experience, we have the expertise, we've weathered the storms, the ups and downs, the social and political turmoil, and we've done that because we've held it in our roots to keep trustworthiness at the forefront. So as we're thinking about engaging in the AI landscape, we're not abandoning that principle as a company, but rather we're keeping it front of mind. And so when I think about some of the concerns and anxieties around AI that really truly do sit in parallel with the excitement and the enthusiasm around how AI is going to solve some of the world's most pressing challenges and make light work of what used to be difficult tasks, we can't divorce those conversations from the real responsibilities that we have to make sure that AI is implemented in a way that's equitable. That means everybody having access to the tools that they need, no matter where they sit in the world, no matter what arbitrary background description defines them, that they have equitable access to these tools. That is the way that's ethical, that protects society, protects humanity, protects individual agency and autonomy, but also in a way that doesn't lose faith or doesn't lose hope in the realities that can come when we embrace this technology and let it grow. So that was a lot. I kind of verged off of your question, but the last thing that I'll also say is that I mentioned that HP is hell-bent on owning the future of work through our AI implementation internally and externally. But when we think about the word work, we think of work very holistically as anything that you consider to be work tasks. So that also includes education. Education is an extremely important part of this conversation. We cannot own the future of work. We cannot determine the trajectory of the future of work and the critical role that AI is going to play in that without also thinking about AI in education. I'm so glad to see so many students in the audience today. Newsflash, many of you are leaps and bounds ahead of many of us that have been doing this for years and years and years. So we have to make sure that we're bringing in the next generation, the young people, and that we're bringing in education. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask you a quick follow-up?
Of course.
Well, you have a new report out about these issues called HP Futures.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And you work primarily with kids K through 12. Can you talk a little bit about that when you mention, the younger generation?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm so glad you mentioned it. Thank you for the plug. Big plug for HP Futures. You can go and Google it and get the link, or the team can send around the link to it. It's in the program, even better. Thank you, Lauren. That's why you're the best. HP Futures is something I'm really excited about. Leading HP's government affairs, I cover a number of issues, and some of these issues are really hard and challenging and heart-wrenching and challenging to work through. But being able to cover the future of AI, the future of work, AI and education is some of the funnest work that I get to do because it's something that I'm personally passionate about. And we all know that that's when work doesn't feel like work, when you're personally passionate about it. The other time that work doesn't feel like work is when you have the right tools to actually help you get the job done. So what HP did and what is released in our HP Futures campaign, or our publication, is really we did a pretty large-scale a study including 100 different countries. We included policymakers, academics, corporates, education, the like, to really understand how are people implementing AI? What do they think about it? What are the challenges? And where should we be focusing on? Where are those tension points? Where should we be accelerating, which i.e. means, and I'm sure you know this, where should we be investing? When you say where should we be accelerating? Where should we be investing? Where can we definitely be the change makers and the difference makers? And so if you get a chance, click on the QR code that's on your program. It was being showed up here. And check it out, HP Futures. We have some pretty concrete recommendations across industry, across academia, across the private sector about how companies can be thinking about AI, implementing AI. And just as my own plug, I want to remind, we are the OG tech company. So we're the grown-ups in the room. We know what we're talking about. We've been doing this a long time.
Thank you so much. Oh, OG, love that. Angela, now to you. You are a professor. You regularly engage with younger people. How do they think about AI? And I think it's funny to ask this, as we know we have a lot of younger people, students in the audience, but do you think that there are generational differences there? And if you could talk about that.
Yeah, so here's the thing. I think there's some generational differences, but I've also, in addition to teaching our first semester freshmen, our 17, 18-year-olds who first step on a college campus trying to better themselves, I also engage within the business communities here in DC, Fortune 500 companies, who tend to lean maybe a little bit older than our 17 and 18-year-olds. And whenever I talk about AI adoption or the appetite to try to get their hands on these tools, I actually see a lot of comparability between these two cohorts. For my young freshmen, high schoolers, AU students out there, a lot of them don't know where to start, right? They've never really had a structured environment where they've had anyone convey, here's what this tool is, here's what AI even is, here's the benefits, the downsides, why to be skeptical of this technology from the first point. And so what we're really trying to do at KOGOD is create this structured environment where the second that they step on campus, they get the AU way of KOGOD, of here's our navigation guide, of our ground rules of where we can use it, where we can't use it, how you can use it to not replace your thinking, but actually extend it a lot further, and give them the structured guidance to actually allow them to grow with this technology and ask the right questions. I see the exact same parallel with all of my older generations who are trying to adopt the technology, because we're really entering these uncharted territories. Now, that's not to say, I will say, some of the concerns between these two different groups are a little bit different. So my younger students out there, they're definitely a lot more environmentally minded. They're definitely a lot more socially minded, where they're actually being very skeptical about this technology and being sure that we're not hurting marginalized communities in additional ways than before, just amplifying it, kind of like Lauren was discussing with the Grok stuff going on. And with my older folks, because they have so much tenure in business, 20, 30 years of expertise, they tend to skew more into, the ROI of this investment and how we can do it in a human-centric manner where we're not necessarily just replacing people, but reshaping the entire job industry as a whole.
Wow, when you talk about the younger generation and not trying to hurt marginalized communities, being climate change, or I assume it's about, is it the data centers that they're concerned about? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so it's two things. From the environmental standpoint, I think everyone immediately anchors on water usage, which is not to be dismissed. However, there's been some studies out there to show that the water usage is actually not quite the worst thing environmentally, and it's the energy usage of all the data centers. So the water, there's been some charts flowing around where actually golf courses are far, far worse for the environment than AI actually is, believe it or not. So that's definitely one concern. And then in terms of the marginalized communities, we have an entire lecture on AI bias. So I always go through a very silly example where I talk about, okay, we've fed this AI system thousands of pictures of dogs and thousands of pictures of cats, and then I show them a picture of a squirrel, and I go, all right, so what is this animal? And they go, what? It's a squirrel. I'm like, I know you know that, but the AI system's gonna say cat, or it's gonna say dog, because it's missing this entire group of people from being a part of that training ethos. And so that's kind of one way where we really start thinking about, okay, well, what actually makes these AI systems, and what are the inputs, and how are we actually ethically getting that training corpus so that we're not just ripping off all of the work of publishers?
Wow, thank you for that. Learned a lot in those couple of minutes. Victoria, you are a tech entrepreneur. Give us a sense of how AI can plug in seamlessly to various industries. Everyone okay back there, hopefully? Including healthcare and finance.
Well, I think I can answer, I'll answer broadly, and I can answer best specifically with my own company, with Acrolis. One of the things we chatted about yesterday that I think is really important about AI is that it seek to solve a specific problem. You know, I think the way we all think about, the way a lot of us think about AI is large language models, and you just, you know, ram a whole bunch of information from all over the internet into it and then kind of let it do its thing. And that's what causes, you know, hallucinations and inaccuracies and doesn't really solve problems. So in my industry and in my company, and I think this applies across sectors, it's identifying a specific problem and then giving the AI all of the data that is relative to that problem so that it can solve it, you know, in a very specific way. So Acrolis digitizes and analyzes documents, financial and other documents for lenders so they can make super, you know, the most accurate credit decisions possible. So we use a whole series of, you know, what are called vertical AIs. So these are not like, you know, horizontal, where there's sort of like a broad array of information in there. Each one of those AIs has been fed data. And we've got a nodding head here. I think what we do is similar in a lot of ways. Each of those vertical AIs has been asked to solve a specific problem and fed the data to solve that problem. And I think that applies across sectors. And then the human in the loop technology that we just talked about. So Acrolis has been using AI since inception, and has been using human in the loop, and by which I think we all can intuit or know what that means, but it's really critical and I think so germane to the future of work and how AI can be used and how it can also you know, potentially even create more or different kinds of jobs. But so we use the machines and the AI to come up with the most accurate digitization or analysis of a document, and then we have highly trained people doing quality control at the end. So the accuracy from the AI could be as high as, you know, 97, 98%, but lenders really want 100%, you know, or 99.99%. So then these highly trained individuals get it to that, you know, 100 or darn close to 100%. So that's what we do at Acrolis more broadly. I think it is really the most effective use of AI that I know of is identify a very specific problem, feed it the data, and let it solve it. And then if you need some smart people in there, you know, to iterate on that, you know, you do so.
Could I ask a follow-up? And I would love to open it up to the panel now that everyone has spoken, so please feel free to add to what each of y'all are saying. But what are some ways that AI in the workplace uniquely affects women? If you could talk about that, maybe the four of y'all have a little bit of input on that question.
I know I just spoke, but before we get to the, you know, uniquely in the workplace, I think it's important to reiterate what's been said, which is, you know, the two of the leading broad problems facing women with AI are the same ones that affect women in tech, you know, generally speaking. And, you know, so one is digital inequity, just not having access to the technology itself. So in developing countries, I think it's like 20% of women have access to the internet. Or the education to use technology. And then the other big piece, I think, is that bias that we were just talking about. Just women often aren't even in the equation when technologies, including, and very much so, AI, are being developed. So just to set the table, and then we can get more specific.
So, I mean, as Lauren introduced with the statistic, AI adoption has leaned pretty heavily men first, and then women are at a much lower adoption rate. And so I think that actually, that separation is creating this really big jagged edge in the whole AI adoption curve, where women aren't getting a seat at the table to be involved in the conversations about how AI is actually being incorporated within their own workforces, right? And so Whenever I meet an AI skeptic, I know I'm an AI guru, I love it, I can talk about it all day. They're my favorite people. Like, believe it or not, I love a good AI skeptic because I want more AI skeptics involved in these conversations. So I want these AI skeptics to actually like start using the tool. And you might be skeptical and you might go, I don't know, or I don't like this, or I don't like that, but I want you to keep pushing and I want you to keep exploring, because the more you can actually get involved in those conversations, the more we can have actual, I don't want to say this in a bad way, we can have better conversations to push this forward. And the vast majority of computer science education, there is no requirement of an ethics course. So people who are actually building this technology don't have any moral compass, ethical compass, whatever you want to call it. And so we need to start bringing those concerns actually to the table. And the way we do that is by getting more involved and kind of jumping in a little bit deeper.
So I'm going to add, I think it's an opportunity, and the opportunity is in bringing your own seat to the table, because the one thing that we do have as women is the empathy. And when we're talking about a fundamental paradigm shift in the way that people operate and the way that companies work and the people's jobs are, that empathetic voice at the table about the implications of what you're asking of your workforce is incredibly critical. And that is where that is your opportunity. And I say that very much from my heart, because I look around me and I'm like, you should not be afraid of it. You should absolutely figure out how to lean into it and figure out what it means to your workforce, and then figure out how you make them comfortable with it. And you're not going to do that if you're not comfortable with it yourself.
I'm going to lean in here. And once again, I'm going to answer from two different perspectives. I'll answer from my HP, Chief Public Policy Officer perspective, and then from Brittany. When I think about it from a corporate perspective, Lauren mentioned it, but I think it's worth mentioning again. Capital flows are critically important as we think about innovation, and AI is no different. Right now, capital flows into AI innovations and AI startups are disproportionately going to male-dominated areas, firms, ventures, et cetera. There is a gap there that seriously needs to be addressed. We definitely need more women to step in, lead these opportunities, be given these opportunities, because it's due deserved, and be taken very, very seriously. So there's quite a bit of a gap that has the potential to get worse. It falls along the lines of the same gaps that we see in the tech industry at large. Now, taking off the HP hat and thinking about it from a Brittany perspective. If adopted appropriately, correctly, with openness and curiosity, AI has the potential, some of the AI tools that are now being developed, implemented, and launched, has a potential to be a tremendous boon for efficiency and productivity. And let me tell you what, you know who needs that? A lot of women. And I will say that because I'm one of them. By and large, across our societies and many others around the world, women are still the fabric of our homes. We still disproportionately manage the child care, the home care, caring for elderly parents, et cetera, et cetera. Those types of work activities still disproportionately fall to women. So when I hear about something that can make me run faster at work, be more productive, be more efficient, sign me up. Because my plate is overwhelmingly full with all of my other responsibilities that I gladly take on, because I love my babies so much, that I gladly take on. But this is a real opportunity for us. Women are suffering across societies from burnout, from exhaustion. This is not the complete answer. We still need to do the work to drive those cultural changes that's going to be required so that work at large is more equitably spread across our society. But man, oh man, is this a game changer for us.
I would love to pick at that, but I would love to end before questions with one general question for me. Before we open it up, please start thinking of your questions and let me know if you have one after this. What will an AI-powered workplace look like 1 year from now? If y'all have a thought about that.
I'll start. And this is just me just thinking about it, because I didn't see that question in the prep materials. So I'm thinking extemporaneously, you guys. So bear with me, and don't hold me to it, because I could be way off mark. But when I think about an AI, and maybe I'm being hopeful and optimistic, what I hope is that the gains and the productivity and the efficiencies, the problem solving, the innovation that we're able to realize a year from now, I think it actually will mean people working less. And I don't mean that in a negative word or in a way to mean that people aren't going to have jobs, because I pray to God people still have jobs, including myself. But what I mean is that I'm hoping that it frees us up to do more of the thinking, the strategizing, but probably more importantly, the things that we love. It can get us back to a place where a 40-hour work week becomes normalized, or maybe even less, returns us back to being normalized. I hope that in a year we begin to make inroads in truly, truly bringing us back to a place of balance between what you're doing at work and still having freedom to explore your joys, your passions, your hobbies, your family, etc. Like I said, maybe I'm being Pollyannish here, but that's who I am.
And then I agree, but I also think it's gonna become more human. So I think we talk about all this tech and how we're gonna automate all this stuff, but we really need to lean into the skill set that makes us uniquely human. That's our judgment making, that's our storytelling, that's our communicating, that's collaborating with all your colleagues. So the more you can lean into those like traditional like soft skills that we get to rebrand as power skills, because that is really gonna be the differential of how we can make work more fun, have more collaboration and community, and really lean into some of the skills that make us uniquely human.
If I didn't have to be in a spreadsheet all day long, do you know how much I would get done in terms of like having conversations and collaborating and innovating and whiteboarding? I mean, when's the last time I got up to a whiteboard? That I think is what will make a difference.
I mean, I would agree with all that, and I would also just double down on my point about solving specific problems. I think like truly revolutionary things could happen in a year, depending on what problem is being solved. So, like the example that everyone talks about is the protein folding, which I barely understand what it is, but I understand what it can do. So I think in that area, I just happened to meet a recent Yale grad who, a biology major, who is like going off to do a job and is going to use the protein folding to like help solve, like cure disease. So that is happening right now. So I think there could be some really exciting outcomes and discoveries, in certain areas in as little as a year.
Thank you all so much. We have mics. If we've got questions, raise your hand. We've got time for about 2 questions.
Thank you. I have a question. I guess you'd call me, I don't want to say skeptic, but I'm just skeptical about everything in general. Until it's proven, I'm like more of a science kind of person. My thoughts are, and maybe this goes directly to Angela, and if anyone else cares to join in, my concerns are a lot in education, because and I might be outing myself of my age, but when I was young, it was very important to learn how to write in cursive. And eventually we got this like amazing calculator, and we didn't have to do the long math anymore. And it was so like exciting and invigorating, but we still actually had to learn how to write in cursive, and we still had to actually do the math and then make sure that we kind of just use it as kind of a backup to make sure that that was correct. It was almost like checks and balances. My concern is for the youth today, and maybe this is why this question is pointed towards you. Will they have to learn those basic things anymore when they're no longer required to know as an individual? And how are you the human element that can be the checks and balances for that and be the expert when it's not even a requirement to have to learn those things anymore? And I think that's where my skepticism comes in.
Yeah, I mean, those are great questions, and they're things that we are having conversations about literally every day on our campus. So 2 things that I'm going to say to that. The first one is one of the biggest concerns that we have is that when you have worked in industry and you've gone through all your training, you have your internal fact checker up here, right? You can look at the ChatGPT output and kind of like in 30 seconds go, that's not quite, it doesn't pass the sniff test. For a student who doesn't have that domain knowledge, they look at it and they don't even know why it might be wrong, right? Like they don't have that intuition of like yes, no judgment that we have. So the way that we're approaching it right now, and again, this is all kind of experimental and kind of at the cutting edge and forefront, is we're really keying in on 3 things. The first one is making sure that all of our students have their domain knowledge. So if you're a finance major, you got to know all your finance stuff, right? Like by the time you graduate, you have to know that. The second one is those power skills. So can you communicate? Can you collaborate with others? And the third one is how does that AI literacy kind of fly into it? So we're not using those tools to replace the judgment, but to extend it. And if I can give an example of one of our classes, we're really changing our role as professors from being a lecturer of content delivery to leaning into the AI to do that delivery. So we have a class that we've rolled out this fall for all of our freshmen where they don't have a textbook. Their textbook are ChatGPT prompts about a particular topic, and then every student will get their own personalized readings and YouTube videos. Now, what happens if any of you have gone to ChatGPT is do those links work every time? No, sometimes it might hallucinate. So it's the student's job for their homework to come prepared to class to discuss about leadership or whatever the class topic was, and make sure that they're doing the fact checking and critical thinking of the AI output. We've had pretty good results with that one, and we're gonna keep trying to lean in of like, how do we instill that critical thinking? How can we remain skeptical of the outputs that we're getting from these LLMs while still kind of giving them the agency and the curiosity to lean into this in the areas of their own?
I just want to get to one more question, if that's okay, but since we don't have a lot more time, if we can.
Yeah, that was such a good question.
Get one more, and maybe we do a quick little, everyone respond as quick as possible. Just want to make sure everyone talks.
Thank you so much. Just want to introduce myself, Constanza Frisch, and I'm the managing director of Aspen Digital, and also representing the WIN Challenge that looks at women in the workplace and times of AI. And so one question I'm having, when you were looking at the future of AI, I emphasize with what you said. It can make our work so much more productive and so much more fun. And I'm also conscientious that this is easier to say for women like us who are in a position of power, you know, up in the hierarchy, et cetera, et cetera. And I see a lot of angst among the younger generation in terms of entry jobs, you know, being rationalized away. And, you know, and the AI in terms of productivity can still not do their laundry and do their cooking. So, you know, they are being left in that old productivity gap and and doubts about the future. So I am wondering, you know, to bring it down to the personal, if you were to advise your daughter, what would you say? You know, if she should focus on, should she go to college? Should she try and get a job? Should she, if she went to college, should she do computer sciences? Or what would you say?
What a
Loaded
great question. What a great. And I will lean in and take a first stab at it. And preamble, I'm not going to have a perfect answer, because these are the things that keep me up at night. And honest to God, Jill and I were just talking about it just 20 minutes ago, right before the panel started. But what a great question. I think there's a couple of things. I'll start there. We could spend an entire panel unpacking what's going on with entry-level jobs, the workplace, all of the dynamics and injects that are impacting that, because this is AI plus. So there's a lot of complexity into what's going on there. Second, what I do have a 14-year-old daughter, and this is what I do tell my 14-year-old daughter, and it's gonna go to the question that Elizabeth asked as well, is that, number one, keep focus on those domain skills, the knowledge, and learning how to learn and to think for yourself. Do not, at any cost, abandon or outsource your own capability to think, especially not when you're 14, 15, 16, until forever. But as you're still learning how to learn and learning how to think critically, invest the time and energy to build that muscle. Do not at any cost, even though it's shorter, faster, you want to make the grades. I'm like, damn the grades, did you learn? Learn how to learn. That's going to be very, very, very critical. What I would put behind that, though, and second, is invest in your own AI literacy, because you're going to have it. And investing in your own AI literacy does not mean that you, like I said, outsource your ability to think or your own ability to learn, but you need to invest in your own AI literacy. Learn what it is, learn what it isn't, learn what it's capable of, learn the guardrails, develop your own opinion on ethical implementation of it, develop your own opinion on guardrails of it, and take the time to learn how to use it effectively, productively, in a way that works but doesn't detract away from your own learning. That's what I tell my 14-year-old. Today, my answer may change in 12 months as the technology changes here, but that's kind of where I sit on it today. And that's me speaking as Brittany, not on behalf of HP. I gotta give my caveats, you guys. You guys know how it goes.
Any of y'all want to address that before we wrap?
I mean, I think that regardless of age, I'm going to go back to what Brittany said, and we talked about this yesterday as a panel. It's the love of learning and your lifelong desire to learn that will keep you ahead of the game. AI is changing under my feet every single day, and I'm trying to run a company, and I'm like, uh-oh, what happened today, right? And every single day I go out and I figure out, what do I need to know? What do I need to learn? What do I need to be reading? Who do I need to be listening to? Because part of this journey is that no one has the full answer. And I think Lauren said this at the beginning. No one has the full answer. And so you have to have an opinion, and you have to have your own thought process, and you have to have your own interpretation of what AI can do for you in your job, or someone's going to figure it out for you. So that's kind of my thought process.
You have your Microsoft on kind of low. I don't know if people heard you, but that last bit about people are going to figure it out for you, you should say that again so everybody can hear it.
If you don't have an opinion or a way that you can use technology as it's coming at you for your job, if you don't figure that out, someone will figure it out for you. That is how people become obsolete in their roles, is because they're not trying to be lifelong learners.
Yes.
Anyone else want to? Either of y'all want to jump in with some last comments?
That was really a perfect way to end, but I'll just add, I have a 28-year-old daughter, and what I would tell her or any other young woman is, figure out what you love and do that and pursue that, and yes, be a lifelong learner, and emphasize, independent critical thinking. That's going to have more value as AI becomes more prevalent. Being able to think independently and critically is going to add more value in the future than it does now. So try and be one of those people. That's what I would advise.
Angela, anything to add? Well, thank you all. I was trying to keep it, sorry for the rushing toward the end, but I really appreciate hearing from all four of you. This was a fantastic conversation. We are going to leave it there, and I will send the program back to Lauren Leader.
Lifelong learning. I mean, it's really hard to argue with. And I love that question, because I think it is the most important question that people are asking today, which is like, if the world is changing, what am I to do? So as we transition to our next incredible conversation, there are some seats in the far side. I know we're very cozy because this is such a great conversation and so many of you are here. So I'm thrilled. So I'm going to scooch down because I get to be, I get to be the moderator for this next conversation. I'm going to put this mic down while you're taking your seats and move to the far end. Our next conversation is one that I've been personally incredibly excited to have, because the three women that you're going to hear from are doing some of what I think is the most important transformational work in the AI sector today. And they're sometimes the least heard from, and that is leaders of philanthropy and impact beyond just the corporate sector. And what I've been learning as part of this conversation about the ways in which the sector for good, if you will, the philanthropic sector, is leaning in to try to address AI is riveting. So we have three absolutely incredible speakers, and we will also have, wait, I just lost my, okay. I'm here. AI did not help me do this right now. I actually wrote this. My staff wrote this. Thank you, Priya, for writing. Did you use ChatGPT to write this or no? Not for this. Okay. It becomes a punchline now. Everything becomes a punchline about ChatGPT. So what's so interesting is what is happening in the philanthropic sector, which is one of the reasons why we're having this conversation today, is because of our relationship with Omidyar, who's been one of the most long-lasting and meaningful partners for All In Together and for me personally since I started 11 years ago. But I want to start by inviting up Maria Cecire. Actually, am I saying it? Did I say it wrong? Cecire? Cecire. Maria Cecire is a program officer for higher learning at the Mellon Foundation, where she leads portfolios including digital humanities, digital justice, global academic freedom, higher education in prison, and Asian American and Pacific Islander studies, among others. She represents the Mellon Foundation on the Humanity AI Steering Committee, which we're going to talk about in a minute, and in several higher education funder collaboratives. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you.
Camille Stewart Gloster, who is very well known to this Washington, D.C. community. Who knows Camille? Everybody knows Camille. I was so excited when we got Camille. I mean, this is an amazing conversation, but I'd never met Camille. I just follow her on LinkedIn like everybody else in this town. She is a strategist, advisor, and executive recognized for her leadership at the intersection of tech, cybersecurity, national security, and foreign policy. She is also the founder and CEO of CAS. Is it CAS or CAS? Okay, we're going to say CAS Strategies, which is a strategic advisory firm helping governments, companies, and nonprofits navigate converging risk. And as many of you know, she was also part of the White House Cybersecurity Task Force in her previous life before her entrepreneurial turn. And then, of course, literally everyone in Washington knows my friend Michele Jawando. Not just because she's one of the best dressed women in this town, I'm just going to say it, with the best shoes. I'm just going to say it. She does have great shoes. She loves a great shoe. That's because this is a women's forum. We can talk about shoes. But so as you all know, Michele recently became president of the Omidyar Network, which many of us were very, very excited to see Michele get that level of flowers and appreciation for her extraordinary work in this town and beyond for so many years. But she now oversees a multi-million-dollar portfolio and spearheads the organization's efforts to make technology work in service of society. I love that line. I've really been thinking about that. And she works on inclusive investment strategies and policy work across all of their philanthropic initiatives and has committed $1.94 billion to organizations that share its vision. Michele is also a very longtime friend of ours, of mine. This is, I think, your third or fourth All In Together program that you're speaking at. But, you know, I appreciate her so much because she makes it all very real for those of us who don't actually really know that much about these complicated subjects. So I am going to start with you, though, Michele, because Omidyar, part of why we came together today is because of the work that we were inspired to do, because of Omidyar's commitment to investing in the good of AI. And you've launched this incredible initiative, $500 million committed with top 10 other foundations over 5 years to mobilize civil society to shape the future of AI. So can you talk a little bit about Humanity AI, why now, what is it, why it matters so much?
Hi, friends.
Hi, Michele.
Okay, I do call and response a lot. Hi, friends.
Hi.
All right. I don't. There are no strangers to me in DC. So it is so great to be here. There are so many great friends here. But I really want to thank Lauren for her leadership. Most people, when they decide, and I was in the living room of your first DC conversation, and she had this kind of massive idea. And most people have great ideas. Very few people implement those ideas. And Lauren is one of those people who knows how to get it done. And so I'm so proud of you, friend, for celebrating this. But I'm also really proud of all of you because you're out in the streets these days. It's hard to get to places. So the fact that you're here, you get a round of applause. I absolutely am a believer, a deep believer in the transformational power of technology. I've had a wonderful career that's taken me everywhere from, as they say, big tech to policy in and around the world. And so anybody Star Trek, Star Wars in here? Okay, all right, very good, very good. I grew up with these images of using technology in distant planets, distant galaxies, and using that technology in service of helping others. And so that was my kind of ideal of how I would think about technology. But so often the ideals that we have as young people, when they meet the real world, they are blocked. I'm on the board at McCourt, so I love seeing so many McCourt students today. And I just think about all of the ideas that you have when you're at that stage and you're like, I'm gonna do everything and I'm gonna use this technology, and then you get stuck, right? You can't find access to funding. Or someone says you have to grow up and have a real job. Isn't that a horrible thing that we say to people? And we often look at where can you make a difference? And so for many of us, we go into the private sector. For many of us here in DC, we work in government, state, local, federal, or multilateral organizations because we're a policy town and we pay attention to that. And we don't think about our opportunity to leverage these moments beyond what we are feeling to what's possible. And what I love about what we're trying to do at Humanity AI is that we have a scenario right now where there's been about $290 billion in venture capital just in the last 2 years on AI, and less than 1% of that has gone to civil society, to nonprofits, to community organizations, to leaders like Lauren, who are thinking not about returns, but they're thinking about how do I help that young mom who's trying to figure out with 2 young kids? Or how do I help move forward questions that we have about cancer and ways that we can fix for generations to come our challenges with the environment? And so what we're trying to do at Humanity AI is really answer that question and to have a massive infusion of capital, yes, but we're never gonna meet private sector capital. What we're trying to do is we're trying to galvanize all of us. We're trying to get the voices of civil society, of nonprofit leaders, of young people, of people who are often closest to the problem. Women, typically, we are what I like to say, the community architects. We are usually the people who are in charge of caregiving and healthcare and education. And yet, as we look at data, we know that we are not typically at the tables as we're even developing AI solutions for those problems. So there has been a massive influx of AI, ed tech, and health tech companies, and who are still missing from the table? Women. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna stop talking because I really wanna get everybody in, but that is really the goal, that's the mission, and that's why I'm motivated to do this.
So I wanna keep this going, but one of the aha moments that I had about how important it is that these women are doing this work, and all of you here who are doing this work, is I was at an AI event. I think it was the Time Women People of the Year event in New York at Lincoln Center, and they had 5 founders of the big, it was like NVIDIA and OpenAI and all the biggest AI companies, and it was all the male founders on the stage, and there was one woman there who I really wanted today, but she wasn't available. But anyway, who has been running, an ethical AI organization, and all the founders of the AI companies basically said the following: AI is bigger than us. We can't control it. It's gonna do all these things, and we just need to hang on. And basically, their attitude was, there's nothing we can do to mitigate the harms of AI. AI is happening. It's here. And the one woman on the stage stopped them all and said, what are you talking about? Of course we can. And it is our obligation to ensure that this technology is not owning us, but that we are actually establishing what are the guardrails and the boundaries and what do we want this to do in transforming the world. So it was part of why I came to this conversation was I do not fundamentally believe this is beyond our capacity to determine the future of how this is gonna shape our lives. I know that's why you are all here. So Maria, I know that's gotta be part of why Mellon is part of Humanity AI, but you've mostly done education philanthropy. So why this, why now? Where's Mellon in all of this?
Sure, and thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be in conversation with these brilliant women in this room full of brilliant women and more. Mellon is an Arts and Humanities funder, and my first graduate degree was in medieval studies, so what am I doing here? And the answer really has to do with many of the things that Michele was laying out for us, right? AI is not just a series of technical tools. AI is a cultural phenomenon. It's an imaginary. It is a narrative that is being pushed primarily by the people who are trying to sell it right now. There are many other ways it could be imagined, used, shaped, but this idea that the future of AI is inevitable and the rest of us have to chase after it and spend money in one particular direction in order to do that is something that we don't have to accept. And at the Mellon Foundation, we focus on the humanities, on the human. And as Michele was saying, there are not enough, unfortunately, folks who wield capital where their primary bottom line is actually us as a society and us as individuals and the voices that have been left out and the voices that we've never heard from yet. And so by coming together in this philanthropic collaboration, what we're hoping to do is to bring together folks who have lots of different strategies, who come from lots of different perspectives. But at the end of the day, we know that what we're hoping for is to build a society that is more accessible, more equitable, more humane. And for those of us at Mellon, we think humanists and artists are absolutely essential to that. You know, literally that's what we do is we study humans. And the kind of skills that were just spoken about that everyone is saying are necessary. You know, on the one hand, universities and K through 12 are being pushed to be AI ready, but what does that actually mean? What are the durable skills? And everyone on this stage just before us laid out a set of skills that are the kinds of things that come from sustained thought, deep discussion and engagement with other people. My history of studying technologies from the Middle Ages to today show that we have transformed over time in relationship to our technologies, but our technologies have never transformed this quickly. So our social capacities, our social norms have not had time to catch up with how quickly the technology is going. So we have to be super intentional. But as the last panel was saying, if we don't set those intentions ourselves as a society, someone else with more capital and other incentives are going to set those for us. So we are really motivated to work together to make sure that we all have voices in ensuring that we set those norms for our parts of every sector that we belong to, our civil society, and also our really intimate lives. You know, when in your dating life, you know, it goes really deep.
Wow, that's incredible. So I'm like, my head is spinning. Camille, like, help us bring it together because you've worked in government and now you're doing a lot of work in the private sector as well. But like, what is the space that philanthropy can address, or that maybe there are still these gaps where the private sector and government cannot? I mean, it's part of what they're trying to do, right, is that there is this big space somewhere in the middle between like government regulation. We'll talk a little bit about policy after this, but the sort of that framework and then the private sector and the motivations of the private sector. So where is that middle that needs to be addressed, and what do you see as the biggest opportunities?
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I'm so excited about Humanity AI because people have to be at the center, like to even do technology well, to advance national security, to leverage the technology thoughtfully, to make the most money. You have to think about the people you are seeking to serve and how the people who create it, who operate it, who implement it, change the way it shows up in the lives of your users. So then how do you ignore people? And what all of this points back to is, and one reason I hate that inevitability argument, is we are the blind leading the blind. The leaders of these companies have no idea. That's why they're firing people one day and being like, kidding, please come back the next. That is why their internal organizations are shifting daily. And some of this is warranted, right? Like, you cannot prescribe what the job of 6 months from now, much more 6 years from now will be, which is why those foundational skills of really deep context knowledge, systems thinking, and depth of expertise are going to be integral for you to navigate the workforce. But in a moment where the federal government, the apparatus that usually puts guardrails in place for us, and domestically especially, right, has said, I'm going to let industry do their thing because we're, for whatever reason, going to allow industry to push forward and develop this capability in a way that they think is responsive to need. But companies are clamoring for guidance, for guardrails. One of my biggest clients is a coalition of CEOs who are like, let's come together to figure out the rules for ourselves and to share tips on how we do this well so that we are not reinventing the wheel every week, because we're all learning and iterating, and this is a really tough challenge. And so, irrespective of the moment we're in now, philanthropy has an opportunity, has a calling, has a mandate to bridge the gap on this confusion, to invest in the places where the drivers and the incentives don't match to help shift the market. So traditionally, companies are driven by their bottom line. If they were doing more long-term thinking rather than thinking about their Q1 balance sheet or just these quarter by quarter, they would think about some of these things that we're talking about, like how people are going to respond. When people wake up and realize the impact on their daily lives, how are they going to recoil their support or be upset or want to change the trajectory? But since they're not thinking like that, philanthropy has an opportunity to flag those things, right? This is going to do X to people's privacy rights. This is going to change the way people show up. And government right now should be thinking about things like workforce resilience. We are going to have a labor crisis. We are going to see the impact on our economy if people cannot get jobs, which should incentivize companies, because when your people are scared, they do things that you don't want them to do. That's how you get insider risks. That's how you get people who don't adopt the technology appropriately. There are a whole bunch of cascading risks. So it's a really ripe and exciting moment for philanthropy to identify those places where being forward-leaning, we're thinking about the human elements of the evolution of this technology will benefit us all.
I mean, it feels very much like this both and all of the above kind of moment, right? Because we could not be here today if it weren't for, the extraordinary support that we get from corporations who want to, collaborate with us to help have conversations like this and be pushing the envelope and want to make sure that civil society is part of these conversations. On the other hand, there's so much work that the nonprofit sector could never be able to do with just that, right? We need philanthropy supporting civil society. And Michele, one of the things I read about how you're talking about this, which I thought was so cool, was about pivoting from civil society, meaning like the nonprofit sort of infrastructure world, the All In Togethers and everybody else that's out there trying to uplift society, pivoting from being auditor, which I understand to mean I think someone on your team called it the AI cleanup crew, okay? So going from being an auditor, the organizations that are calling out the problems, to being builders and architects, right? Organizations that are actually solving problems, which is what, Victoria was talking about, like these extraordinary health challenges that have the potential to be cured, the democracy challenges, the access to information that we hope to facilitate for marginalized communities through AI, but that only civil society would be, to your point, Camille, like plugged in enough to do. So take that to the next level. How do we do this? How do we go from auditor to builder, like at scale?
Has anybody in here ever solved a problem? I mean, raise your hand. Wow, you're all AI experts. No, and seriously, there's this kind of idea that we don't have any agency, or we don't have the tools that we need to be the builders. One of the challenges that I find often with this moment is that we're told that there are only a few people who really have the answers for all of society. For like all 9 billion of us, there's only like 6 dudes, and they're all dudes, and they live in like one small area in a geographic zip code, maybe a few now so in Texas now, but I mean, we're told like that's it. And I think most of us rationally step back and we recognize that there is genius everywhere, and that each of us have a little bit of that genius. And so we each have an opportunity to like affect what we want to see in the world. And I think most people actually in the private sector recognize that actually we don't have all the answers, and quite frankly, we don't have the capital to deploy the answers for all of the problems that we are experiencing. So we actually want other people to step up and do that. And so that's how we think about moving, first, the idea that you are all AI experts. And I want you to repeat after me. I am
an
AI expert.
An AI expert.
Point blank, stop. because I first have to get you to change your mindset to think that you belong in this conversation. So now you know you belong in this conversation. Okay, so everybody, I said, have you ever solved a problem? And what happened in this room? Everybody raised their hand. Sometimes you're gonna need a technical application to solve a problem. And sometimes you're gonna need to pick up the phone and reach out to a friend and offer some comfort, or you're gonna have to sit and do the deep thinking that Maria shared. And that's how you solve a problem. And so all we're saying is there may be a lot of different ways that we solve some of those challenges, and let's figure out how we empower, how we deploy capital, how we change the narrative that there are only a few people who have the answers to the problems that we're experiencing today.
Can I just add something to that really quickly?
Yes.
Also think about technology in context. The person,
Wait, say that again, I couldn't hear it.
Think about technology in context.
In context?
The person in context.
Context, okay.
The person who created it does not see how you use it, does not understand your community, your culture, your desk setup in your home office, work office. They don't understand all of those things. So how could they be best suited to triage all of the problems that come from that, right? Yes, when you tell them what's wrong, maybe they can find the technical solution, to Michelle's point, but more likely than not, they need a myriad of other perspectives that can paint an entire picture, because the solutions usually are an amalgamation of a number of different things. Some technical solutions, some policy solutions, some just don't use it that way, right? Some people solutions, like we need to train our people to be able to meet this benchmark or do this thing. So even if you just think about it in context, there is no way that those people who are super technical and who created AI in a lab somewhere are the only people who could solution for this.
So it's a perfect segue for what I want to ask Maria about, and I, as a solidly committed liberal arts graduate and child of liberal arts PhD parents, my father is here, by the way. I mean, I was built on critical thinking as the foundation of all, and we've been talking about that all day, but help us understand, what are you hopeful, or what are you seeing that us humanity, liberal arts, creative thinkers might actually be able to change through technology that could, make the world better? Like, you're really close to this. So what are you seeing at this intersection of like humanities and technology that you're excited about?
Sure. So there's kind of two answers to that. One is, what are some of the applications, right, that we see in the humanities? So an example you may have heard about is the ways in which AI has been helpful in restoring, reclaiming, helping to advance knowledge of less spoken languages, right? And we're seeing indigenous communities, the Maori in particular, have done incredible work of building AI technologies that are making it possible to build out their vocabularies and information, and even less spoken languages are now building on that. And so that's an example of something that we can see there are these applications that could be really useful for humanity, for all of our knowledge, and also for the individual depth that comes from different communities. There are practical things like faster, easier finding aids in libraries to get hold of things in these under-resourced parts of our society. So there's things like that, for sure. And I think it's important to invest in those kinds of technologies. At the same time, to belabor our conversation about all the people needed to make decisions. I'm a literature and media studies professor in addition to program officer, so I love a metaphor.
My girl. People.
So to take that architect metaphor further, right? You need people not just who know how to do building materials, but also who know about building codes, and people who understand that community where you're planning on building that building, and know how they might want to use that building, and the history of what stood on that ground before, so you don't build something cursed, And figuring out the infrastructure to get all of those voices in when you build something, I could take that metaphor even further, but I won't, has taken us time. And part of what needs to happen now is putting into place series of procedures and best practices so we can figure out how best to get in these different voices and different kinds of knowledge so that we can make plans for individual tools, individual applications, but also big systemic decisions. Not at all to pick on our previous panel, because I love their conversation, but I couldn't help thinking of a history book from 1985 when we were talking about the ways in which AI applications could help reduce women's work. There's a book called More Work for Mother by Ruth Cohen, and that book is about all the promises of household technologies in the 1950s and 60s and how it was going to make things easier, faster, you have more time, and how that fundamentally restructured the nature of women's work so they had even more work. And to give one example, it increased single-family homes and increased suburban sprawl, which increased the need to drive, which then made women primarily chauffeurs for their children. This is, in a kind of suburban white middle class context. There's other aspects that could be discussed. So just to say, we also need people who can forecast, help us to think about what are the bigger problems that are underlying this? How do we make choices so that the hopes that we have for how this can better benefit individuals, groups of people in a particular way can actually be fulfilled? Right, and so that dream that was laid out before can be fulfilled. We actually can have more leisure time, as opposed to just taking away jobs from a lot of people and not giving them an alternative and making the wealthy wealthier.
That's incredible. Thank you for that. So I want to wrap on this conversation we could have for several more hours, but we can't. Because actually the last conversation is so perfectly set up by all of this, because we have a number of women in the next conversation who are really thinking about also some ways to deploy against some of the challenges that are out there, et cetera. So it's perfectly set up. But I want to each of you about what are you most hopeful about? Either one example of a AI-driven technology that you think is going to make life better, or a promise that you believe is really starting to happen. I want to, in this very challenging moment for our country, I am really leaning into some optimism today. I hope you don't mind. But there's reason for optimism for all the challenges that we all understand. So Michele, start with you. What are you hoping through Humanity AI and others are some problems we're going to advance together?
Jen Urso, Rogue One, has this wonderful line that she actually got from Cassian, but we'll digress. I told you I'd go really deep. But she said, rebellions are built on hope, right? So I want us all to think about ourselves as rebellion fighters. I want us to imagine different ways of being than what is being offered. Because if you can just do that one little thing, then you're already winning, and we're changing the narratives. So one of the things that are giving me hope is we have a partner called Kinfolk Tech, and they worked with the family of James Baldwin.
Oh my God.
To think about how do you answer the question to life's big challenge, like why am I here? And they worked and built an AI-informed physical typewriter that was using all of the works of James Baldwin that they licensed from the family. So there was remuneration back to the family. It was done in a setting that was not extractive, that was in community and collaboration. And they had this fantastic exhibit that people would go and they would ask the spirit of James Baldwin on this physical typewriter, how do I think about myself? Or I'm dealing with a challenge with my boyfriend. What does James Baldwin have to say about that?
That's so
and it was
beautiful.
this beautiful example of technology and art and culture and imagination, and that gives me hope.
Oh, that is so awesome. Camille?
I love that.
I know you have one.
What gives me hope is that we might actually be in a moment where we reclaim our agency. That people are aware enough, concerned enough, excited enough to use AI to understand how it's showing up in their lives, to use their levers of power, whether that's your vote, your money, your use, all of those things, to influence its trajectories, and that it empowers you, if you use it, to be able to create those agents of change, right? To be able to start that initiative that bridges the gap, to be able to use it on behalf of your community, to be able to identify and then mitigate a risk that is impacting whether it's a discrete population or all of us. I'm really excited about that because I see people stepping into that moment more and more and more. Like I got a call, you know, I'm the cybersecurity girly, right? So I get the call from the friend who's like, I think I got a text message that wasn't my bank and I answered and now all my money might be gone. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, so I bought this thing that scans for my, my account information that, you know, pulls me down off of these websites and that does and. And I was like, great. I hate for an incident to be the thing that gets you there, but I feel like AI might be that incident for a lot of people because I'm also seeing that. So I'm really excited about that.
Amazing. Maria?
I'll build on this last comment, which I thought was great. You know, I have hope and excitement for the possibility that this moment is waking a lot of people up to grab their agency and then make kind of surprising and fun bedfellows, you know, to turn our heads in the direction of what it means to be human. You know, the 20th century in America was the century of STEM. We pushed STEM in higher ed and in all kinds of other places because we had to win the Cold War. Now we're in a moment where we're asking ourselves, how do we win our planetary and species survival? And what does that look like? And I hope that we turn to the humanities, and I take so much hope and joy in hearing all of these business leaders saying these are the skills we need, this is the kind of depth we need, and I hope that we bring that to our education systems and that we have the people power to insist that there's something bigger that we all want to hold on to and work towards together.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you. I needed that. Like really, I really needed it. Please join me in thanking this amazing group of incredible women. So we have one last conversation between you and cocktails, and I really think you should stay for both the conversation and the cocktails, because this is a really fantastic group of people. And I'm gonna move over. Campbell, you wanna like work your way into the room? Campbell, come on down. Yeah, that's you. So first I wanna introduce Riley Rogerson, who's gonna be moderating our conversation. She covers politics and Congress for NOTUS, the News of the United States. She is a former congressional reporter for the Daily Beast and the Anchorage Daily, and she also wrote in Bucks County and the Philadelphia Magazine. And our panelists today, wait, you can't leave yet because this is really good and there's drinks. I'm just saying. Our panelists are an incredible group of women who are all thinking about these problems and more. And I'm going to start by introducing our board member, Ginny Badanes, who's the general manager of Microsoft's Tech for Society program, where she leads a global team focused on protecting communities, strengthening security, and building trust in technology. She's also worked with us for the last few years on some amazing initiatives around the integrity of democracy. We worked together at the conventions, at the Republican and the Democratic convention in the last cycle to train women candidates and their staffers on AI, and it's been an amazing partnership for many years. So please join me in welcoming Ginny. And my friend Campbell Brown, who also probably doesn't need a lot of introduction, except she's doing a lot of stuff that is not just media and people might not know, because she is the co-founder and CEO of Forum AI, which I am completely obsessed with, because she's bringing expert judgment and transparency to AI systems. So Forum AI's network of world-leading experts evaluates how the major AI models are handling subjective high-stakes questions, which is just unbelievably important. She was previously at Meta, has had this long, incredible career in media. Please join me in welcoming Campbell. Also, I swear to God, we did not coordinate the camel. Like, I'm so amazed. I don't know, there must have been like an AI agent that told them what to all wear today. And actually, there's room for you on the stage for this one, so just, you know. And then last but absolutely not least is our longtime friend, Katie Harbath, who's the founder of Anchor Change, which is a newsletter and consultancy that explores the complexity of the digital age in global politics. She's a writer, a speaker, and an advisor on this ever-evolving language. She's also a former All In Together board member, but I'm gonna wear her down until she comes back. I warned her about that before we got here. And then last, but please join, welcome Katie. Sorry, no, we do have one more. Sorry, where's Shane? I'm thrown. Oh, you're on the other side. That's why I was confused. You didn't get the camel memo. Should you sit in the middle to mix up the camel? Okay. So last but absolutely not least is Shane Tews, who is a non-resident senior fellow at AEI. We think we have a big AEI crowd here today, do we?
It's right next door.
Oh, it's next door, so that helps. They didn't have to go very far. Yeah. And also is president of Logan Circle Strategies. She focuses on information and communication and technology, cybersecurity, and all things tech, and has for a long time, and I stole Ginny's microphone. Arr. Anyway, please join me in welcoming Shane and this amazing panel.
Hello. Oh, there we go. Hi, everyone. I'm Riley Rogerson. I'm a congressional reporter with NOTUS. So excited to be here with all of you. It's been great being here. My fiance is in tech, and he knows how to ruin a date night when he gets going on AI. And I have to say, I feel so empowered and inspired to hear from women in the room about this subject. So I'm excited to get to what I think is one of the most interesting parts of AI, which is the policy space. On Capitol Hill, I talk to lawmakers all the time about where AI is going, and so often they have ideas, but they don't have answers about what regulation is going to look like. So I'm excited to hear from you all. We are going to do questions at the end, so get your wheels turning now about what you might want to ask this amazing panel, and we can dive right in. I think let's start with a broad opening question for all of you. What are the most important policy issues around AI right now? And when we say policy, who's setting that agenda? Is that Congress or is that the corporate world?
I'll start. So, I mean, it's a big question because a couple of years ago, we were hearing all about safety. You know, they had the AI safety summit that was in London, and then they jumped over to Singapore, and then it's just like we just kind of forgot about it. It went away. So the big question on that is, you know, what is it that we should be concerned about, and then who should be working at that level? I've been in tech for a long time, and there's a big difference between hardware and applications, and that is when it comes to standards. And we're back to a question where maybe we need to be thinking about who is going to be in charge of some basic standards, which we are calling guardrails. And I think that those questions are still out there, which is why there's still a lot of fear factor in this space, because everybody's using this tool differently, as we kind of heard in the last panel. Not everybody's using it for the same reasons. And that's also why we're seeing you know, this challenge with the federal government versus the states and you know, where they're going in. I'm a big believer that laws are laws. So a lot of these things we don't need to relitigate. We just need to be looking at them and how maybe we need to be looking at the laws in a new, you know, the new value proposition with AI being there. But we don't need to create brand new laws when the laws that we have are very solid. I realize I'm saying that during an administration where everything's up for grabs. So that would be my answer.
Hey everyone. So I would say, first, I want to challenge a little bit the premise that it's only between government and business sector, because I think there's a huge role for civil society and academia and media and others that need to be brought into this conversation earlier. But one of the challenges I see in doing that is when I'm out in Silicon Valley, the conversation happening there is very different than the conversation happening in this room. And I think we need to do more about how we bridge these communities in terms of having those really tough questions around building what those guardrails are. And the reality is they are going to start at the companies themselves first. And then we also need to dig down. There's a lot of us, when we think about the big companies, and we'll be thinking about the CEOs and what are the executives' decisions. What decisions are the executives making, which are important, but I come from the world of trust and safety as well. And there's a lot of employees on the front lines who are very much trying to figure out in real time what these guardrails should be, how people are using them, how we need to be thinking about them. And so I would also encourage, as you're thinking about this, there is a lot of agency, and those people do want to engage with and get thoughts from a lot of different sectors and trying to figure out what these different solutions are, because I don't think anybody wants just one entity controlling this, right? Like nobody feels comfortable of like just the companies controlling it, just the government creating the guardrails. We got to figure out a good way of checks and balances between all these different entities to try to figure out where our new societal norms are going to be.
I would add to that this is an interesting moment, particularly because, AI is moving so fast, government moves so slow, but the market is sort of making some decisions for many of these companies, meaning consumers, enterprise are not going to adopt AI and spend the money investing in AI for their businesses or using it, on a daily basis as habit unless you really trust it. And trust to me is kind of hit a wall, I think, with AI. Like, we've all used it enough and experimented enough that we know we have to check our work, that it gets stuff wrong a lot. And around high stakes topics, that's not okay. And the companies are now sort of facing the consequences of that. So there are lawsuits because, a chatbot has given some horrible mental health advice to a teenager. You're seeing like the sort of blowback that's now forcing, I think, the first step that Katie said, which is the companies to address it internally. And I think that gives us some guidance in this sort of space to say, okay, well, what are we going to do? Because I don't think government will move at the pace that you hope it would in these situations. But what can we do in the meantime to develop these guardrails, either with the companies who are driving it, or that's part of what our company does, is sort of independent evaluation of these models around high stakes topics. But I do think you're seeing like emerging an ecosystem that is trying to sort of focus now on this space, whether it's around compliance issues or what we can put into place just to develop the trust that you need to continue growing the businesses.
To build on that, because I completely agree, I would say that the area where you will actually find the most bipartisan agreement is actually still in safety. It's not necessarily in the broad framework of safety that we were seeing in previous years, but it's on these issues that are starting to really get consumer attention, which is things like child safety. And that is an area where we get letters from Republicans and Democrats, and often together, because they are very concerned, rightfully so. And so the companies are already reacting internally, but that is an area where if we do see legislation, that's likely where we're going to see it succeed, is on those really critical issues. But to your point, as the tech companies, we actually start to see some of the perceived harms, maybe real harms, faster than governments can respond to them. And it's in our best interest. We actually have this is where it's helpful, where this aligns with business interests. It's in our best interest to get out in front of that and resolve those issues. A tangible example is data centers, which came up in the previous panels. People are very concerned about data centers in their communities. They worry about what it's going to mean for electricity and water, as you all heard. They worry about what it's going to mean for local jobs. They worry it's going to not actually help their tax base, but it's actually going to deplete the systems there. And that's an area where we have been hearing as tech companies, I can say this for all of them, a lot of concern. And so what you're seeing are tech companies like ours. I'll do our plug. Microsoft put out an announcement this week about how we're going to work with local communities when we build data centers there to address all of those issues. We're going to put more electricity on the grid than we're taking. We're going to pay our fair share. We're going to make sure that water is replenished in those systems. We're making very clear, concrete commitments because we need to earn that trust in order to keep our business moving. There is a very clear business incentive. The good news is it's also good for the community. It's also good for the people we serve, which will ultimately help us as we continue our business.
Campbell, I'm going to go back to you. You created Forum AI recently to explore transparency in AI, but you have a background as a journalist. You've worked at Meta. Can you explain how you decided that this issue was worth putting all of your energy into now?
Sure. Sort of information quality, I guess, is the way that I would describe it. It's been the thread through my career from journalism. I oversaw news at Meta. And then when ChatGPT was released, it was instantly clear to me, I have teenagers, that this was going to be the sort of funnel through which all information flows, and watching how quickly they adopted the technology and started using it for everything, never questioning any of the sources. And so I sort of started thinking about it through a news lens, which is they are getting generally pretty bad information from chatbots about what's happening in the world and what can we do to improve the quality of that information. And to me, it's just human engagement and human in the loop, to use the tech term, because the AI itself is not ready. And there are so many people, and a lot of the people who joined our network are Washington-based, but politics and foreign affairs, I think it's where I started because it's where, I was particularly interested, but mental health, I think, has become a huge issue where you do need people who are in the loop, evaluating the model answers and retraining them to get more accuracy, and to examine things like what perspectives in this model response, are missing. Bias is a huge issue, whether it's political bias or gender bias. There's a new study that just came out about AI having bias against people of color, against women, so their diagnoses are often off for that reason. And so trying to address these, I think now, and the only way you can do it, I think, and that's part of what we're doing, is sort of independent evaluation, which is right now, the model companies, essentially grade their own homework. There's no sort of independent body out there that's saying, yes, this model is good at this one's good at this. We don't let pharmaceutical companies approve drugs. We don't let restaurants give themselves health grades. We shouldn't let the big tech companies who are designing this set the rules and grade their own homeworks and tell us how their models are doing. I mean, this is the technology that we're going to build the future of our world on top of, and it has to have some independent evaluation, and that just doesn't exist yet. I think it's, to your point, it's in the company's interest to do this. It's not, it's not something that I think is going to be a battle between the tech companies and the people who are doing the evaluation. If you want to win competitively, you want your model to be better. You want to have that independent input. And I think we're just moving to a place where that's becoming increasingly important.
Ginny, it's no secret that lawmakers are often behind the curve when it comes to AI innovation. You touched on this, but can you expand a little bit more about what Microsoft is doing to be ahead of the curve?
On innovation?
On AI, yeah.
On AI. Sure. I mean, a lot of people, when they think of Microsoft, I'll say what a lot of people say to me. They're like, oh, you guys, you are OpenAI, or you work with OpenAI. People get very confused. And the truth is, we're very independent companies. We obviously have a big investment there, but they have their own products, and we're actually competing with them in a lot of ways. So where we really think about our role in AI starts at the sort of foundation layer, which is, again, the data centers, the energy, and the actual ways that people are storing this data and processing. That's where we start with our role in the stack. But we do have other participation within the stack. So people often talk about the technology stack or the AI stack, and people do it like this. I realize I look like one of those people. Anyways, so it starts with this sort of foundation layer, and then it builds from there. And so yes, we have investments in that area, and that's important to us. But we do also have a lot of applications. So people will use Copilot when they're using their business, M365, Outlook, Teams. If you're in any of these applications in sort of a work environment, then you've come across our products as well. But the other way that I think about our role in AI, and it really goes more to this conversation about policy, is trying to sort of anticipate what not just the skepticism and the concerns are, but what are those real harms that could come. So we have a inherent tension in our job of both out advocating for the great things AI can do. I am excited about the healthcare stuff. I really am. It's going to be amazing. Maybe it's just because the role I sit in, I spend a lot of time thinking about, yeah, but what is this going to do? Lauren and I have spent a lot of time thinking about what is this going to do for women when it comes to deepfakes? Women are just going to, they already are, they always have been, and for now it's looking like it's not getting a lot better. What is going to happen in a world where you can't control an app that can make any woman look like she's nude? And then just this week, we're really seeing that come to a place where it's more consumer accessible than it's been in the past. What are sort of the constraints that the companies need to put in place? But then also, what are the laws? How do we put some structure around that so that women are protected from that kind of technology? And, we applaud the Take It Down Act. I think it was a great first step. There were a lot of us at the time who were looking at it saying, this is not going to do the whole thing, right? For those of you who are familiar with the law, it is a good law that allows people to essentially go out and have their image taken down once it's been created. But how do you actually stop at the generation point? How do you stop the distribution? What kind of actions can they take after the fact? So we lead, I hope, or we try to lead both on the actual stack, the innovation, but then also sort of on the risk mitigation side of things.
Shane, you work on AI with clients at your firm and from a more academic lens at AEI. What does smart AI use look like to you?
So I'm actually going to use a Microsoft example. Several years ago, I was reading the Financial Times on a flight, and they were talking about the importance of breaking down the silos. So if you think about it, if you're using Microsoft in an enterprise environment, you may have two people that are working on very similar solution sets that don't know each other, may not even be in the same geographic location. But the idea of having the AI system be able to comb through, because it's going to, you're going to have the legal lens of being able to like look at all this data across the way. You can start to solve problems that have just been very siloed, just for maybe geographic reasons. Maybe they worked in two different divisions that didn't realize they were working towards the same solution set. And that was kind of my first real entree into looking at AI when it was just starting to come out. And I thought, that is brilliant. I mean, you think about how many times you like walk, even at like a cocktail party, and you're like, wait a minute, you've got like half of the solution set to something that I've been thinking about for quite some time. So I think as much as we all like it all to be about us, I mean, it's always the challenge is like, what is it about me that AI is going to do to make this better? There's so much that is ahead of us in the enterprise space or even in the academic space. And healthcare is a perfect example of that with the protein folding, is we might have been so close but not been able to get over the hurdle of where we can start to really see answers. A lot of you probably know about AlphaGo was the key element here, which is this. It's a game similar to chess, it's more difficult. That they just told it how to, what the rules of the game were. They didn't tell it how to play the game, and the machine came out with ways that humans had never played the game, and they were just sort of astounded by it. And I was reading an article, or I'm reading a book right now called Reshuffle, and they said the hardest part of this is getting the humans to let go of their current systems. If you give the machine and say, here's what my end goal is, and I'm just gonna let go, come out with the answer, it's gonna break your system thinking that you have been taught for quite a few things, and it's gonna take a while for you to emotionally say, okay, this is probably a better way. You're gonna fight it at first. And I feel like that's the stage we're in right now, because we've all been classically trained in many ways, and there's nothing wrong with the classic training. It's important to test the validity of the answers. But there may be things that we just didn't have the tool set. We didn't have these things there. And so we need to have an open mind about how we're moving forward using AI and let it be a positive lens as well.
It's a fascinating anecdote. Katie, Anchor Change is a newsletter and consultancy that helps people wrap their head around these huge issues. What are the most common questions and concerns that you hear, and can you share some of that guidance with us?
Yeah, so probably the number one thing I've gotten in the past year when we're talking to people about, first just about how to use AI, and there's a lot of what Shane said of just the real mental shift and giving people that grace of knowing that this is a real shift in thinking about how you need to work. I remember a couple of years ago, I literally put a Post-it note on my computer screen that said, can you use AI for that? Because I needed the constant reminder of kind of being like, oh, should I think of a different way in which to use this? But after the question of how do I use it, well, it's the question of the ethics. People feel, so those of you who know me know I have my fun mantra, panic responsibly, when it comes to AI. Because I find that people are, I made up this phrase in 2023 because people were being told, if you use it, it's cheating. But also, if you don't learn how to use it, you're going to lose your job. And so you're frozen. Oh, but which way is the right way to go? And what I found, and I've been writing about this. I have an ethics disclosure on my newsletter. I'm writing a book. I've used AI to help me edit the book. I'm putting transparency, a whole thing of how I used AI in helping me to do that. Because I think we need to have that open conversation about, I'm learning. I was trying to think through some thoughts for a newsletter, and it gave me a great line, and I was like, shoot, can I use that line? I Googled it to make sure it wasn't plagiarizing it, but then I was like, do I cite it? Do I not cite it? What do I do? There was no rules for the road for that. And so what I really encourage folks to do is, first of all, let's not be scared to have that conversation about the ethics. Let's understand and give ourselves all grace that we're all trying to kind of figure out where we all are individually within our organizations, what that looks like. And the only way to figure that out is going to be to have those conversations and have them out openly, and not worry that the minute you say you used AI for something, that somebody is going to be like, you're cheating, or that's wrong, or anything like that. And I think, too, know that this is going to evolve. Know it's going to evolve, and at least be, when you're using the tool, be having sort of the ethics and the questions in the back of your head of like, is this helping me achieve the goal I want to, or is it maybe taking away for something? Do I need to make adjustments to it? I'll give you just another example on the book writing. I got to a point where I think I actually let AI do too much. And I noticed it doing a lot of repetitive words and other things, and it actually took me longer to edit it than it did to so then I changed my prompt to, instead of having it just rewrite the thing for me, I was like, show me where the line edits are. And I changed the prompt to be like, don't do these type of like, if this, then that type of things. But I had to learn how to do that. And so I think the ethics around all this is the biggest question that I do get. And those are some of the things I talk through with people as we're trying to figure it out.
Man, I love that so much because I've never thought of that, but you're absolutely right. We're always being told to use it, and yet I always go back and remove the M dashes. Like, why? Shouldn't I be proud?
It's a tell.
Shouldn't I want my boss to see
also,
the M dashes?
Poor
but I
M
removed
dash.
them.
The poor M dash. It did
loved
nothing.
I loved M dash. Now I can't use it.
The other thing is, if you read Katie's Substack, when she solves a problem, she tells you how to the solution set and where to. Like, you did a list like last year, and you're like, okay, people wonder how I can make my life work. Here's the 17 things and here are the people that make it happen. So just a little shout out. Here's a girl who shares. So
Thank you.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, Katie, I appreciated everything you said because it resonates with the conversations we're having in journalism as well, which could be its whole own panel. But I want to ask you all, when you're talking to government leaders on this issue, what is your level of confidence that they're going to be able to meet this changing moment?
I always start out with, and this is even pre-AI when it just comes to technology, is you need to solve for the outcome, not the input. And what I mean by that is, don't blame the technology. What is it you're solving for? What is the problem? Okay, how do we get there? And it doesn't, AI is bad is not the answer. So it's not something that started with AI, but it's something that's always been a mantra of mine, and that gets them to get out of the thinking of, I don't like what I don't understand, so I'm like, let's think about what your concerns are, and the nudity is part of that question. Like, how do we solve for that? Is possibly AI part of the solution set on that? So that's just my big thing. You look at the outcome, not the input.
I'd say we've come a long way from the we make money from ads, sir.
Senator Reese, or even the Ted, who is the series of tubes, our good friend from Alaska.
Ted Stevens.
Yes, Ted Stevens.
If y'all don't know what I mean, there were some hearings where it was Facebook, but the senators clearly didn't understand like some really foundational stuff about technology, and that was like not a great moment, I think, for anybody. And I would say we've come a long way. Not to say that every member of Congress or every senator is now an AI expert, though maybe from the previous panel we should empower them to say they are. But but I will say that the conversations are certainly more advanced. I'm seeing members of Congress, I'm seeing senators and their staff for sure leaning in, understanding. There's really been, I think that was a bit of a wake-up call of like how we needed to understand technology better in order to legislate it from our legislators. And so I've seen improvements. Of course, there's still going to be people who probably don't understand it, but I've seen some improvement there.
I actually think hearings have been better in the last year. Like, you watch them and you're like, oh, we're starting in the middle now. Like, usually they're starting at the beginning. It was awesome.
I think another thing too that I oftentimes ask both policymakers and their staff, these are really hard questions and many impossible trade-offs when you get into the nitty-gritty and you're sometimes having to make choices between a lot of bad options or not ideal options. And a lot of us up here on the stage have been in those meetings, in those rooms where you're like, I don't like any of these. But you have to sort of you got to figure out the right path forward. And I wish that we did more of sort of having some of those examples and talking through, again, how we might want to think about making some of those decisions. Because, for instance, right now, everybody's instinct is just to label everything. And labeling has its place. I'm not saying it doesn't, but also people start to ignore labels. There's a lot of issues with labels. There's questions of how you label it, what it says. There's a lot that goes into that. And I worry that there's sometimes this want to be like, this is the easy thing to do, we're gonna label it and we've solved the problem. and we're done. And that's not going to be the case. So we kind of need to be going much more deeper to really get to the root of some of these problems of figuring out the right solutions.
A lot of times history can be a bit of a guide on this. So when we look at sort of new technology evolving and where we see it going, it's always helpful to go back and say, well, what was the last huge general purpose technology that hit the scene, and how was it built, and where were the mistakes? And one thing that we talk a lot about, and I'd never actually understood where this term came from, but the term red flag, like red flag laws. It was actually based on when vehicles first came out. The law started in the UK and then it spread to the US, was that an individual had to walk in front of every moving vehicle with a red flag and do this. And that was to keep it from hitting people. But that also meant it went the same speed as a person who was walking, kind of defeating the purpose of the car. And so these kinds of laws that are often put in place to, help public safety and with the best of intentions can get a little bit too far and then actually undermine the purpose of the technology or the use in the first place. So there's a lot of looking at where, labeling I'm not suggesting is a red flag law, but it's true that it seems simple, it seems helpful, but when you really start digging into it, it's not going to solve the problem, and it might create new problems that you hadn't anticipated.
I'm also just, in my conversations, and you all, I'm in New York, you probably had far many more than I have, but I was struck by how much the focus is still on social media. Yeah. And we're still fighting the battles from a few years ago. It kept coming up in every conversation I've had. And then, particular lawmakers are focused on particular issues, and I'm glad that child safety and teenage safety and some of the mental health issues have become a focus. I heard that a lot. I know there are hearings in the works for the spring, but there's no, at a higher level, because I think your point is if you start sort of breaking it out, let's solve this problem here and this problem here and this problem here, that you're not dealing with the macro issues. And I honestly don't know how you deal with the macro issues at this stage, and I certainly don't think that the level of education and understanding is anywhere close to that in Washington to be able to have those conversations.
Okay, I think we're gonna open it up to the audience for a couple of questions.
That was an enthusiastic hand raise.
All right, let's do it.
All right.
I wasn't sure there was going to be questions, and I had this question that was bubbling as you guys were talking. So, one, thank you all for coming and having this conversation. Really enlightening and really great to be in this room. I wrote down my question because it was just as I was listening, all questions happen. So, and sorry for my voice. I had the flu over Christmas. It was awful. It's weeks down. I'm okay. But nonetheless, you all are engaging policymakers either at the national level, state and local level, in different forums, and either by way of thought leadership or just direct engagement. First of all, I'm Jared Green. I work for BSR. I'm an inclusive business director at BSR, a global sustainability network and consultancy. Excuse me. So my question is, what's different about AI as an innovation and the adoption, what's different about AI as sort of an innovation tool and how you engage policymakers around it? For me, I think we tend to think of AI as a tool that's going to affect things like clean energy adoption, healthcare, the more inclusive workforce development and social policies, but these are all things that are public policies too. So AI, right, is an idea. And from a policy perspective, the companies, other governments that are looking to adopt this, they're investing in ideas from a public policy standpoint. I hear you saying there's so much more work to do, right? So our country is in the throes of debating things like clean energy technology, social policies around equity, affordable housing, also healthcare adoption, right? So what's effective for you all in this conversation around AI adoption that should be considered in these other policy conversations?
Well, I'll start by doing a little definition. I used the term earlier, general purpose technology, which is another GPT, not ChatGPT, but, and I think it's helpful when people think of AI as a general purpose technology, and the difference there is, it's not, when you talk about the light bulb versus electricity, when you talk about social media versus the internet, right? AI is not social media, it's the internet. AI is not the light bulb, it's electricity. And where that carries through to all these other policy conversations is it will become part of the fabric of everything in our lives. And so, to your point, every policy issue will be an AI issue. It'll be woven into it. And so it's hard to carve out AI and say, well, we're gonna have an AI conversation, because the reality is it's pervasive in everything else. I don't know if that necessarily answers answers the question, but it kind of sets a little bit of the definitional tone for how you think about this as we go forward.
But I think you can address some, like, use bias as an example. There are lots of different kinds of bias, and they have to be addressed in different ways. But I do think you can, I mean, that's something that my company does, is evaluations around bias, and we train our own models to do the evals and focus on particular areas, whether it's gender bias, that's like one example, or political bias. But I do think that there's room for improvement around some of these big questions, and there are ways to do it. And I think it's a work in progress, but I do think people are trying to look at the bigger sort of societal questions as part of this. I don't feel like it's being ignored. I do think it is a focus, at least in the conversations I'm having with some of the big companies.
All right, another question?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your comments. Very insightful. My name is Theo Skiatis, and I'm the head of red teaming for a nonprofit called Humane Intelligence. So my comment is in regards to the comments that you made about red teaming or evaluations writ large. I agree. I think that evaluations are an incredible opportunity to build transparency and boost better practices. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity for us to do evaluations in a way that improves overall outcomes. And yet I also wonder if companies truly are aligned with the public interest in external evaluations. And so I'd love to dig a little deeper there. What are some of the ways that you all, but you especially think we can better incentivize companies to undertake third-party evaluations of AI model performance? And like, is there regulatory pressure that we could apply in this space? I think there's a potential analog to third-party risk assessments as ordered by the DSA across Europe, potentially as applied to AI ecosystems, but I haven't quite seen that play out in full yet. Thank you.
Honestly, the biggest incentive right now is competition. I mean, the companies want to win. All the different AI companies that are focused on the big models, and they want to improve their models, and they want to show that they're the least politically biased, and they want to show that they're the best at this and the best at that. And so for at least the moment, I think competition is honestly the best incentive. I of course, like having regulation in place and requirements around independent evals. It feels to me like that's inevitable at some point, but it's it's certainly not going to happen in this administration, I don't think. And I would be surprised. I mean, it just feels like it's years off. I mean, there will probably be things like this executive order that the president put around political neutrality. I'm not going to call it woke AI, but whatever you want to call it, political neutrality in AI, that now if you want a government contract, you have to demonstrate that your whatever you're selling is politically neutral. There may be like specific areas that get addressed through executive order or something, but if I were trying to figure out what to do in the interim, I really would look at where companies are competitive with one another and where they want to improve, and use that as an opportunity to help them. It's not like if you're just focused on trying to mandate, I don't think you're going to you'll have limited success in the short term, just because we have a long way to go, I think, before government gets there. And but I do think there's opportunity for organizations like yours and companies that are doing this work to figure out ways to work with the big labs to try to align incentives.
And I think it goes back to what you were saying about trust, right? Like, trust is going to be a competitive advantage. And does it get to a point where people are like, I need more third-party evaluation to say that your model is trustworthy? And going back to what I was saying earlier about needing to have a lot of different industries involved in this, I was doing some work last year for the audit companies, because auditors, that's a way in the financial world that they have brought trust into what the companies are doing from a fiscal standpoint. And now the auditing community is trying to figure out what role can they potentially play in also auditing these AI models or other things like that to help build up trust, so that the companies then have that competitive advantage, because users and companies are wanting to use them because they know that when the company says my AI model does this, it actually does that.
Okay, I have one final lightning round question for all of you. What do you read, watch, or listen to in order to stay informed on AI?
I actually create my own podcast with Notebook LM. I love it. So I take all the things that I need to read that day before 11 o'clock, I put them in, create a podcast, and I listen to it on my way to my next meeting. It's my favorite thing to do. Oh, I'll do a tutorial afterwards.
It's a great thing, do it. It's
Okay,
so
yeah.
fantastic. You can actually now download, like if you have a bunch of YouTube videos or audio, you can download them to Notebook LM. I just did this all in my podcast episodes, and it'll summarize them for you too, and like do all of that. But what I'll do, I always make a point to listen to the earnings calls. The companies tell you where they are going in the earnings calls. And a lot of people are like, oh, that's just meant for the investors and stuff like that. No, they're telling you right out where they're going and what they're thinking about in those calls. And I find that there's nuggets in there that don't get reported on.
I am reading a lot of academic papers right now. It's just, this is a world that I, did not come from. Even when I was at Meta, we were doing a lot on trust and safety, but not in this space. And so I feel like I still have a lot to learn. And there's so much research that's being done. And I'm using a lot of Notebook LLM too, and LLMs generally to help me summarize and translate what's in the academic papers. But I'm sort of drowning in white papers at the moment.
You'll be shocked to hear I use a little less Notebook LM. However, anything written by these two ladies, I tend to read. Katie, just another pitch, has an amazing Substack and lots of great content. I like Hard Fork as a podcast. I always think it's great and entertaining, and they tend to be merging a little bit of what's going on in the tech world with the political world, which I find really interesting. And then we have some wonderful researchers inside Microsoft, and I tend to read a lot of what they put out, both because it hints at where we're going as a company, but they also tend to be sort of out on the edge of things. So we have a diffusion report, for example, we recently put out, which talks about where in the world people are adopting AI, which is really interesting. Places like the UAE are way ahead of the rest of the world. So as we think about the U.S. is in front, we're like 16th. We're not quite there. Actually, that's not true, but we're not nearly as far out ahead as some of the other countries that maybe surprise you.
All right. Thank you all so much
Thank you.
for being on this panel. It's been amazing. I'm going to give it back to Lauren Leader.
Who learned something today? Mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. What an incredible set of conversations. I just want to say a brief thank you to the team at All In Together, Priya Alangavan, Jill Valenti, Emily Prendergast in the back. We are small but mighty. I also want to say a special thank you to Justin Pellegrini from NOTUS, who has done heroes work helping us put this together, and to all of you. And please stay connected to All In Together. Follow us on the socials. Also, sign up for our newsletter and follow us. Just one last word is that if this kind of work and this kind of programming is important to you, please consider supporting us with a financial contribution, especially if you came here as a guest of somebody. It is an extremely challenging time for all of civil society, as many in this room know, and every even small contribution does make a difference to our mission to keep educating and engaging and empowering women across the country with great forums like this. We are so grateful to you. Stay and get to know each other. This is one hell of a room. So please stay and enjoy yourselves, and thank you for spending time with us. Thank you.